Okay, folks, good morning. My name's Scott Hutchinson. I'm the state senator for the 21st District, coming to you from Western and Northwestern Pennsylvania this morning. Wish I could be there in person, but I am just thrilled to welcome you to our second annual Local Government Symposium. This is being hosted by the Local Government Commission, and we have been looking forward to this day for a long time, and we're excited to hear from all of our presenters today. I've had the pleasure of serving on the Local Government Commission since 2015, and this session actually marks my second session as chairman of the Local Government Commission. I'm one of 10 members of the General Assembly who serves on the commission, and some of my colleagues, other members of the commission will be moderating our other sessions today during this symposium. As many are here who are aware, the Local Government Commission is a bicameral, bipartisan legislative service agency of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. Since 1935, the commission, with the assistance of its staff, has been central to the development of local government in this Commonwealth. We operate in a true bipartisan fashion, as evidenced by the success of commission-sponsored legislation being signed into law, including landmark revisions made to various municipal codes, assisting with the development and other significant statutory innovations, including intergovernmental cooperation, home rule, and merger and consolidation. The commission staff also publishes regular informative reports, such as the quarterly legal update and the Pennsylvania Legislators Municipal Handbook. In addition to serving as a specialized local government resource for legislators, caucus staff, committee staff, and constituents on inquiries, issues, and legislation, providing objective expertise in many facets of local government. Our commission provides a forum for statewide municipal associations representing different types of municipalities and officials, giving them the chance to express their views directly before legislators from both caucuses in the Senate and the House. Today is one of those such forums. This symposium, much like the overall mission of the commission, provides a platform where practitioners, policymakers, and researchers can gather to connect, to share research and policy proposals, spread awareness of local government issues and successes, and work towards increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of local government here in Pennsylvania. Today, we're honored to be joined by our presenters, by members of the General Assembly and participants both in Harrisburg as well as virtually. And we hope this event will provide meaningful opportunities for education and potential future collaboration by researchers and practitioners conducting valuable research and applied local government work. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already picked up your program for the day, they're available at the table set up in the hallway. Commission staff will be with you all day to answer any questions you may have, both in person or on Zoom. The chat and Q&A features on Zoom will be monitored by staff throughout the day, both for questions for the presenters, as well as to provide general information. So I again want to thank everybody who helped organize today, everyone who's participating today. I think we have a great list of presenters on some great topics, and we're looking forward to hearing from all our presenters. So I hope you all have a great day. It is now my great pleasure to move on to our first presentation, which is from folks from Lansdale Borough. We're going to learn how the borough adopted a 10-year strategic plan that transformed the town and its municipal government. So I want to thank all our panelists for being here today. I'll ask you to introduce yourselves, and I'll let you pick your order of who's going to be speaking, and on to the show. So again, thank you. Thank you, folks from Lansdale, and the show is yours.
Thank you, Senator. My name is John Mizerak, and I served as a consultant working for Lansdale Borough. And I think it was the introduction, Senator, that you just gave in regards to describing what the Local Government Commission is and being bipartisan this example that we're going to talk about today is truly a bipartisan example of how both parties could get together and really effectuate change in their community. Local governments, as we all know, face many, many issues, many, many concerns, and probably more importantly, many, many opportunities. And Lansdale Borough is no different. Lansdale Borough is located in Montgomery County, and they were at a fork in the road about a little over 10 years ago. They were facing infrastructure that had not had enough investment made in it. They were facing budgetary and financial issues and concerns. They were facing increasing crime. Then they were facing a situation where there was some, but not much investment in the community with new economic development opportunities that could strengthen and diversify their tax base. So they were facing the same similar issues that most local governments are doing. And today what we want to do is we have to my right, the leaders that took the charge to develop a strategy to be able to move Lansdale forward. And we want to share that with you today. It's multifaceted. It involves both elected and appointed officials within the community, and it involves a multitude of areas. With that, I'd like to introduce the people real quick, give them a chance to at least introduce themselves, and then we'll get into a conversation a little bit about what they did over those 10 years. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of a slideshow that provides you with some thens and nows, and you could start to see how all of their hard work really transformed the borough. So with that, I'll introduce Matt West, who at the time was the council president for Lansdale. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks. Thanks, John. Matt West, former council president for Lansdale Borough back in the day, about 10 years ago. Do you want us to just do introductions now? Or
we can do just introductions and then we can go into this. So
very good.
To Matt's left is Dan Dunnigan, who was also council member and is still on the parking authority for the borough.
Yes, good morning. Dan Dunnigan. I was, during my time on council, I chaired finance and administration and helped with managing and pushing forward the financial changes that we'll talk about later. I do still sit on the parking authority, which in the course of things became an instrumental part of how we work together with the borough, sort of hand in glove, to advance a lot of the things that got accomplished.
John?
Good morning. My name is John Ernest. I am the current borough manager in Lansdale. I've had that role for about 4 years. I started with the borough about 10 to 12 years ago in code enforcement and community development, and I'm now in running the place.
And then Timothy?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Timothea Kirchner. I actually was the county administrator for Lancaster County a number of years ago. Then went to work for the state and then went into consulting. And that's how I arrived in Lansdale Borough, initially as their consultant, to help them with the interim piece, but also to help them find a new manager. And I found myself, I guess I should say, and became their manager.
Well, thank you for the introductions. As I said, it's important. There's a good team of people that came together in Lansdale, and you can see that it may be hard to believe, but we actually all are still very close friends as well as professional colleagues as well. And so I think as you'll see, and we start to talk a little bit about the successes here, you'll see why we still are friends today, and more importantly, Lansdale has had a lot of success due to a lot of the hard work of all the people that are up here. So, with that, we'll just, again, to the spirit of bipartisanship from the Local Government Commission, I think it's really interesting to tell how Matt and Dan met and how they began to take the charge of leading Lansdale through the strategic planning process and to the successes today. So, Matt and Dan, could you tell a little bit about how you guys met and what you guys have been able to work with together?
Thanks. So in order to tell the complicated story of a 10-year strategic plan, I know, right? Nerd alert, walking out on strategic plans and these, highly complicated and in-depth reports. We need to start by telling the story on how we got to that point and how we became so successful. And so I am a undergrad in geography, master's degree in planning. I was working for the Philadelphia Region's Metropolitan Planning Organization. My wife and I moved to Lansdale in 2001, walked to the train station every day, 17 years. And knowing enough about community and planning, it just did not make sense to me. Like, we have a borough of just about 17,000 people. We have great infrastructure. We have one of the busiest transit hubs in all of the Philadelphia suburban areas. Why hasn't Lansdale become better than what we have? And so just asking these questions, and I was flummoxed, right? And so I had a friend of mine who is currently on council, and I was like, I'd like to get on planning commission, just get involved, just thinking about community service. And I remember him coming to my door, and he's just like, well, they're going to appoint somebody else. But have you ever thought about council? I was like, not into politics at all, still relatively not into politics. And I was like, oh, tell me about that. He's like, well, you could be a lot more effective in that role. And so he, gave me a crash course in it. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. The partisan side of it, I was nonpartisan. This is how nerdy I am. He's like, well, you have to pick a party to run. Like, okay. So I interviewed both parties, right? Which would be a good fit for me. And I picked a party, and because I was told that was the way to go, quickly realized I could have done that without picking a party. So I was getting my hair cut. Local barbershop, barber. We're talking. He's just like, hey, heard you're running for council. It's like, yeah, I guess so. Let's try it. And he's like, oh, is anybody else running? So we have a ward system, 3 wards, 3 representatives per ward. We had 2 positions up in our ward. Let's see where this is going. In the barbershop. Oh, yeah, that's interesting, barber says. And he's like, hey, anybody else running? I was like, yeah, there's this guy. His name is Dan Dunnigan. You know him? He's like, yeah, he's sitting right here in the barbershop, right? I was like, what? Of course, I had the smock on it. You wear a barbershop? What do you?
You don't keep this without a good barber, by the way.
And Dan and I introduced ourselves, and it was a fast friendship from the start. Dan has an unbelievable expertise in financial matters. I had the community planning, transportation planning side, the overall vision, and we quickly realized that we needed a team of specialists to help change the vision for the borough. And it was, what a ride.
Yeah, what a ride is right. So an interesting, sort of dumb luck, Barbara knows both of us, but in a small community, not uncommon. And from there, we literally campaigned together. So if there was, you're looking at your street list and you say, okay, Matt, Democrat house, you're first. Republican house, I'm first. And you wouldn't believe that they looked at you like, what are you guys, crazy? And we carried that through because there was, of the 9 that Matt mentioned, there was 5 seats open. So while Matt and I are here today, there's 3 others who were instrumental in getting us to where we were. And we knew if we kept our team together, 5-4 wins. So if we all agreed and could work together to do, and it was, people say, oh, it was a hard decision. The decision-making process became straightforward. Is it in the best interest of Lansdale? Period. And people are like, well, that's going to taxes or fees, services, cutting them, keeping them, all those decisions. It's very simple when that is your singular focus. And I was never concerned about anybody public constituency because I happen to live in a borough with 2 brothers and a sister within 6 blocks. And if you thought you were going to take it from anybody, when you raise someone's taxes or their fees for their electric service, I hear it at dinner tables and at parties and picnics and everything else to involve family. So, but if the focus was what's in the best interest of Lansdale, explaining it gets a whole lot easier. And that's part of what we did. But, it was incredible. We took it so far, and I was just telling somebody this the other night. So the 5 of us ran, the 5 of us won. Better part of 2-1, we won across the board with 5 seats. So apparently our message worked. We knew that was take charge with what you said you were going to campaign on and fulfill everything you could. I think it's in here somewhere later where we talked about, we all knew this was going to be a 4-year ride because we were giving the other side lots of fodder for things that they
Both
could,
sides.
both sides, right?
Because we weren't doing it for political reasons.
Yeah.
We were doing it for what's best for the community. And oftentimes that community aspect is missing from the local government. We didn't care. We didn't care. We all got into it. The 5 of us who ran and won, because we had a shared vision for what we believed the community should be, and we believed in it. And it doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with. It doesn't matter. And we quickly forged around that. And it didn't. both political parties did not appreciate that, because
Oh, not, that's an understatement.
and we realized that, and we made very difficult decisions for 4 years. We knew we could do it for 4 years, but they're going to come after us because we rocked the boat. We changed the political establishment.
Yeah. Your or my own political views based off of anything beyond the borough have to be meaningless if you want to change the town you live in. It's as simple as that. So I may come to you one day and say, Matt, I need your support on this. And it may not work. That's fine. That means the next time when you say, Dan, remember we tried that, didn't really work. I now need your support because we're going to try it my way. You have to agree to that. And you have to be willing to do it. And we were. It was great. But, a ride is one way to describe it, somewhat like a roller coaster.
And I think a segue into that is that we forged the community center, the community base, the elected officials, and we quickly realized, John, this will be a great segue for you for the next section, that we cannot do it ourselves.
Right.
The elected body cannot do it ourselves. Even bringing in a manager can't do it ourselves, and we needed help. So we defined that vision, and we stuck to that vision. And then it really became an easier exercise identifying the right people to plug into that equation to enable us to identify who's going to be the right fit to enable us to get to the finish line to get us to that vision.
Yeah, I would say the transition into needing to find so you have the elected capacity where you have people that are very well educated, you're doing it for the right reasons, trying to help move the community forward. Somebody like Dan with his background took it, and this is a good transition into bringing in the staff capacity. But Dan, your observations on the fiscal status and the budgetary status when you started to take a look at it
Sure.
really raised some concerns for it.
Absolutely. So one of the issues within the borough was we had for decades had a factory known as American Olean Tile. The borough of Lansdale is one of the boroughs in the Commonwealth that sells its own electricity. At one point, we generated it up until the early 80s, I think it was, or late 70s. Mm-hmm. So we are now, when we still run our own electric distribution network. And as a result, we have a massive budget. But American Olean Tile used to burn electric kilns 51 weeks of the year because they had two and they would shut them down one at a time. So they were always running. Out of 50 weeks of the year, 2 of them were burning. That generated at an exceptionally discounted electric rate that they got enough in borough reserves. The borough reserves pushed $30 million back in the early 80s, massive numbers. It basically funded the entire borough. So your taxes could be next to nothing, and they were. Well, that went away. American Olean Tile left. The borough, unfortunately, didn't change its distribution of income for a very long time. And we were on a crash course for it to go to zero in reserves. Well, you can't have an electric distribution network. We own our own wastewater treatment plant. It's the most highly regulated thing. The folks that sit in this place that run that portion of it can walk in and say, you've got to do that. And that's massive amounts of money. So we've got to change something. And what John's alluding to is a call I made to Matt. I don't remember whether we were on our way to a meeting or I was just fired up after spending most of my day where I get a paycheck, not the borough, and running a series of spreadsheets trying to figure out how do we right this ship. And incredibly, it came to $25 a month. So if over the prior 10 years, the administration and council had adjusted their income stream via taxes and fees, it worked out to be $2 a year, because if they had started 10 years ago, it wouldn't be 25. I wouldn't be on council. I couldn't believe it. I was borderline furious. And basically what they did is, it was the old, hey, taxes are bad. Doesn't matter whether you can explain to somebody what they're paying, but I use the euphemism, we gave out $10 a service for $8.50, and we did it for 25 years.
Unsustainable.
So that's where it started to change. And we looked at things like, so when you have those two, what do they call those funds that are the, come on, it just went out of my head, but having the electric distribution network and the wastewater treatment plant, you had to figure out how to match variable costs with fixed costs, right? The fact that you can flush your toilet and turn the switch on and lights come on, there's a cost just to be able to have that at your disposal. That's the fixed cost. Then there's your usage. So we went through all of those scenarios. Long story short, and this will segue in, you'll hear it later, it was a substantial tax increase on a percentage, but it was $25 a month spread out over your electric bill, your sewer bill, and your annual taxes to the borough.
And I think that, when that alarm went off in their heads, they realized that they had and there was some issues in regards to the fact that the management was getting ready to turn over after being there for 30 years. So they were losing some technical capacity there, and they needed to set the stage to be able to move things forward a little differently. And they went out on a trip trying to find who they could bring in and what type of person they could bring in to help right this ship and help start to manage this and moving it forward. And that's where Timmy was brought in as an experienced consultant, that she came in initially to try to help them figure out who that might be. And then it ended up being that she put the mirror in front of her face and so she took on the job. So Timmy, what were some of your initial observations as you got into Lansdale?
And I drove into Lansdale on a very cold December day to be interviewed for this position. I'd heard about this group running together. I'd had the great fortune prior to that to be the county administrator for Lancaster County, where we had 2 Republicans and a Democrat who decided to work with each other and like each other, and pulled all the plans off the shelf and started getting things done. So I loved that. I also understood the fodder that they served up for the next election, because I had to live through that. I couldn't believe I was getting a second chance, if indeed they hired me, to work with this kind of group again. But Lansdale and, Lancaster had a lot of these too, was that one of those tired boroughs. You just drove through it. You saw empty space after empty space. It was not an attractive town at all. Even the train station wasn't that terrific. And they had one of the ugliest parking lots that was next to the train station that I have ever seen, with parking meters that were only 10 cents an hour. Later on, I asked the head of SEPTA, how the heck did you get that? And he said, well, I don't see a problem with that. And as you know, parking meters can be a major resource for municipalities, and this certainly was not the case in Lansdale. So there was a lot of, as Dan said, dependency on the utilities and not on the usual revenue sources that any municipality should bring in. I met these guys, they interviewed me, they asked a lot of great questions. Now this was 12 years ago, but I was a seasoned manager, and I'm looking across the table at this very young council, and I thought, how the heck did they get so smart? Because they knew and understood really what the role of an elected official is. And that is to take care of the infrastructure of a community. That's singularly the most important thing that they do. And then with that, public safety. That's their job. And I'm of a certain generation, and I'll say this, and I even apologized to them at a meeting, that didn't take care of that. My generation did not raise taxes. They depended on other revenues, and they also depended on those sewer lines, those water lines, even the electric. I mean, those transformers were in horrible shape to just keep going. And somebody else down the road will take care of this. Well, here are the somebody else's, and they were bringing me in to do this. Not only did they ask me to come in as the interim manager and help them find a new manager, but Matt said, and I want you to do a full-out operations study. I said, well, that'll cost you more money. And they didn't bat an eye. Because if you have a place that's been managed by the same person for 30 years and has had essentially the same councils for 30 years, you need to look at the place and how it's operating. So you want me to keep going with the staff? Yeah. So I was excited about this group, but I also recognized that I was inheriting a management team that had also been there for 30 to 40 years and had worked very closely with the former manager and with the former councils. And so when I arrived in the borough, another cold January day, and walked into the office, the first thing I encountered was the press. Now, you know, as county administrator, we had 3 newspapers in Lancaster at that time. It wasn't my first rodeo with regard to the press. But here's a reporter who says to me, you know, you're the biggest story in this town. I said, well, that's nice. And he said, and we wanna follow you everywhere on your first day with cameras and, you know, and I thought, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I got to say yes to these folks. And I did, but I said, there's one place you can't come. And that's when I had my first meeting with the managers. Okay. So indeed, they followed me for the day. The managers all came in. I could just tell by the looks on their faces. You know, I've been around. Either one, they're terrified because they've got this new council, or 2, if they've been around for 30 years, they know how to get around things. And they know how to say, yes, ma'am, and then go out the door and do what they want to do. And I understand that, especially when you live in a political environment. So they all arrive in the room. And also, here's number 3. They're veterans. The last thing they want to do is be in a meeting. They just think meetings are a waste of time. So I walk into the room. They all sit down and I say, I know this has to be very uncomfortable for you. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have a whole new council. They've been talking about a whole new way of doing things. You just lost your manager. Please know that I know that. And I'm sympathetic to what you're going through. Got this. And then I said, I know you really don't want to be in this room because you think meetings are a waste of time, but you need to get over that. Because you're going to start working as a team. Because, you know, anywhere you go, this can be private sector, public sector, you have your silos. And I certainly have experienced those. When I went to work for county government, there were people who'd been there 20 or 30 years, didn't even know each other. How does that happen? How does that happen? Now, these guys knew each other, but they had no idea what was going on in each department and who had what in each department. I said, we're going to meet as a team from here on out. You're coming in here once a week and you're going to reveal what's going on in your departments. And we're going to begin to develop a capital improvement list. What? We're not going to have any more fights in here as to who gets what. You're all going to talk about what you need. And we're going to work with this council to develop that. I could tell they did not like the idea of the meeting, but they were intrigued because, fortunately for all of us, this was a good and dedicated staff. They loved the borough. And they have always wanted something to be done, but they couldn't because there was never the resources to do that, or somebody else had a priority that they wanted to get done, statue in the park or whatever. And they welcomed the opportunity to develop this. And as we moved through this, they began to say, what, you have that piece of equipment? I didn't know that. Can we work together to use that? It was a total revelation and a whole new way for them to work, but I watched them begin to adopt this. What they also watched was a council that set the vision, but didn't interfere with what I was doing as the manager and what they were doing as employees.
I could just add to that too, and linking into the vision, I wanted to make that connection with council establishing that vision prior to us being sworn in as residents. We picked up on a morale issue in the borough. And, you know, in any municipality, the two most outward facing departments are your public works and police department. They're the ones that are interacting with the public most frequently. And if you have morale issues in either one of those departments, that's not a good image that you're portraying for your municipality. They're interacting with most people in the town in times of need, or people who aren't from the municipality. And so we explained that to Timmy prior to her coming in, and understanding, you know, trying to get a different type of vision for team building, team mentality, where we're not siloed. It's not a competition. And so that's really interesting to hear, you know, the tactician side of things, her actually doing it, and the elected side, us understanding it and watching her and supporting her in that vision to make that connection and build that true team environment.
Yeah, and the police department, the chief was in the room, and very often in municipalities that never happens, because that's the most expensive department consistently in any municipality. So he was kind of in shock in being there, but very quickly revealed that his budget had been cut and he'd been taken down to by 4 to 6 officers. So the best they could do was catch up. And Lansdale was one of those boroughs that had a growing drug problem, because drug dealers are very smart. They know when a police department is under capacity, and they can just come in and take over houses and do their trade. This council would not have a thing to do with that.
Another part that goes into that, and everybody says you can't run a government like a business. It's true, but you can run a government in a business-like manner. And I always talked about, it's got to start with the receptionist, right? You can't look at, and this will be a good segue for John, we're trying to revitalize a town. It's going to all start on the code book, right? We had a code enforcement officer who thought that book had a yes and a no section. Your code book has no no section. It's yes and conditional use. And if you, yeah, lots of gray areas. Hey, we can think about it. You can come and ask us to say, no, that doesn't apply to you for whatever reason. And the council can do that. So it started literally with the receptionist. If she doesn't greet someone walking in, whether that's a contractor looking to come and pull a permit, an investor in a new business venture potentially, that person might be turned off right then and there. So if we can eclipse our person coming in and they're greeted properly, then it's the next person in line. If they don't treat that person as if they are their constituency and their customer, and understand that if that group doesn't keep coming through with a smile on their face and appreciate doing business and feel welcome into the borough for whatever purpose, they don't come. And that's how your town dies. And so we made a big push on, by the way, in my normal business, I'm a broker. I got to make everybody happy, both sides, all the time. So, and if I don't, it's very easy. You know what they do? They find somebody else, not named Dan Dunnigan, and they do business with them. So that same view of, you have to understand that person coming in, and then within the organization, right? You have to broker, as these department heads had to learn, you got to broker between yourself. When you find out somebody has a piece of equipment you could use in park and rec, but it's never been advised to you, you didn't even know it existed, you guys have to talk to each other and make that deal happen, so that we're not renting a piece of equipment we don't need, buying one we don't need, or doing something where we had the right piece of equipment, but we did it the wrong way because we didn't know we had that. And that'll be the segue in for John, who came in.
And if I can just quickly, this team, as I said, was very, very dedicated. But when you meet as a team, you can very quickly see whether or not it's going to work for everybody on that team. And we had one person who just said, this is not going to work for me. And it was the codes enforcement person. And he had a lot more no's than he did yes. I mean, he was an expert, absolute expert in his field. So A couple of the council members said, we know a guy.
I got a guy.
Got a
I
guy.
got a guy. And he's an architect. Now that intrigued me because here he is coming out of the private sector. And this is, of course, at the time when architects were losing their jobs left and right. And John had been one of those and realized that the field was going to stay pretty bad for a long time and went and got his certifications. I thought this is going to be perfect because he's going to understand how the private sector thinks as they're coming into our town. And he's going to transform this department. And I kind of handed him a mess. But talk to them about what you did.
So I did come on board, and I'll never forget. Matt and I met one morning at Starbucks. I was out of work. A lot of stuff happens in the small community shops, right?
Yep.
So met with Matt, and he said, "Look, would you be interested in coming on board?" And as an architect, I'm thinking about now taking a step into the dark side of the profession, because these are the people that are saying no to all of the projects that I want to design and push forward. Matt said, but think of it this way. He said, you as an architect have an opportunity to design buildings. He said, what we're talking about now is an opportunity to work on creating a community and designing a community. And I had to take a step back and think about that because it was very intriguing. Here I am, 10 years later. It was very intriguing. And it's, for me, very successful. But what these people charged me to do, we were talking about customer service, and our code enforcement department had, at the time, a terrible reputation for saying no. What I tried to help people understand is that code enforcement is most of the time the first opportunity that a resident has to interact with the borough. Typically, yeah, sure, they come in, they pay their bills, you write a check, and you go on. But if you have to actually interact with the bureaucracy of a municipality, it's when you are applying for a fence permit or a shed permit or paving a driveway or an addition. So that front-facing piece is what our impression is going to be, from the receptionist to the code enforcement to the borough manager. So my charge was, how do we change that customer service impression? Because our code enforcement department at the time, if someone would ask them a code question, their response was copying and pasting the section of the code that dealt with their specific question and sending it off. Here's your answer. Well, if you've ever seen a code book, I mean, it is unbelievable language that goes deeper and deeper into the weeds depending on the topic. So the first response was, that's not how we're doing this. We are picking up the phone, we're having a conversation, and we're saying, I'm going to be sending you this particular section of the book, and we're going to have a conversation about what it means. This is what you should understand about this. I also decided that if we're going to be customer service friendly, the first thing we're doing is we are getting rid of our third-party code enforcement company, and we are hiring staff, because we are a 3 square mile borough. And if you need to have a footing inspection or a framing inspection, you should not have to call up to the borough and get put onto a schedule that says, I'll be out there on Tuesday in a week and a half. I can stop what I'm doing. If I have staff, I can stop what I'm doing. I'll be there in 10 minutes because it's not that big of a place. Stop what you're doing, go inspect, come back, finish what you were working on, and let that contractor keep moving on their job. That is so important for a front-facing department. So that's what I came in and kind of helped to set that tone to move that forward.
And little did John know how big his job was really going to get. You know, with most municipalities, and I'd worked with a lot of them as a consultant, Matt talked about Dan talked about the electric, not the electric, what was it? The big-
Wastewater?
No. The big plant that was open.
American
there.
Oil.
Oh, American Only Top.
Very often municipalities will point to that piece of property and say, we need to get another one of those. And that's going to be our magic bullet. And I saw it in township and borough one after another. And what did I see? You're not going to get that. Just not going to happen again. So remember I said with Lancaster County, we took all the plans off the shelf and we got a lot of things done. There was a thing called a comprehensive plan in Lansdale. And you know what? It was really very good. And it echoed the dreams of the community. Now, there was this one spot called the Madison lot, the parking lot, which everyone felt they could develop or do something with. That could have been the magic bullet. But there were so many other things that we needed to do for the borough. And we put all of that together and actually literally put it together in a booklet and brought it out to the private sector, the business owners. We brought it out to every elected official we could find that represented our borough in some way. And to a person, especially the elected officials, they were always expecting the magic bullet. But what they got was a comprehensive plan. And guess what they could do? They could attach themselves to different pieces of that. The other thing that we did, because remember we said 4 years was what you get, because I certainly understood the foibles that come with being in a political realm, is we activated the parking authority. And council got to appoint that authority, and Dan became the president of that authority, which removed one of the biggest projects from the political arena, still kept it very public. Everything they did had to be very, very public, including the whole request for proposal process that they did for developers. But Dan, and I'll just say this, who did not win in the primaries for the next election, was still president of the parking authority. And there had been enough appointments that could last a while to keep things going. So we ended up using not just the council for what needed to be done, but an authority for what needed to be done. And that's when John Mizerak came in.
One of the constant themes through the story, what we're articulating, is it always seems to start off with a cold day. We're not sure why. Maybe that's why Starbucks is thriving in Lansdale, because everybody needs coffee. But on a very cold February day, Timmy called me, and so I'm a consultant. I do community economic development. I used to work for I cut my teeth in local government, and I worked for the Center for Local Government over at the Department of Community Economic Development. And I ran Pennsylvania's planning program. So as Matt alluded earlier, a lot of times when you start to think about planning, people they think about it as the planning and they go into the exercise of planning, but they don't really think about the implementation. And the implementation and needing the capacity and so forth is so important. And Timmy called me and said, we got this lot, and it's been in our comp plan for 25 years, and it says redevelop the Madison lot. And I said, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I did a little research, realized it was one of the busiest SEPTA regional rail stops in the entire region for SEPTA. My thought right away was, well, why would that not redevelop? It's got great characteristics there. And Timmy said, but it hasn't. Why not? And I said, well, let me come down. So I get down there on a cold day, and I get out in the center of the parking lot. And as Timmy said, you can think about it. There's parking meters, there's vehicles everywhere, and it's just this big, wide open lot, about 8 acres, maybe seven and a half acres, right directly right off of the main street, and across the street from the SEPTA station, across the rail lines from the SEPTA station. And I got in the center and kind of doing a spin around, and Timmy said, what do you see? And I said, I see a blank canvas. Right? I said, I see a blank canvas here. There's an opportunity here for you guys. And what a great place, because it's in the focal point of the downtown. It's very visible. All the people that come into Lansdale that don't live there, that use the train station, would see something being created there. And so as you heard, the theme is that we sat down and thought about how do we get some private sector investors to come into this town and start to invest, because there had been limited or no investment really occurring in the borough. So there wasn't a history there. They had a history of saying no, right? They had aged infrastructure. They had some high crime going on. So not a place where people want to invest money. And so because of the comprehensiveness of what they were working on, they were crossing all those negatives off and started to become an area for attractiveness. I got to credit Dan on this. Dan said, what do you want to do? And I said, I think we should do an expression of interest. We ought to see if we can get some developers interested in this. And he looked at me and he said, I don't want this costing them a lot of money. We don't want to send them down a rabbit hole. We want to be business friendly. We want to be viewed as a place that would want to invest. And he said that at every presentation we did. He said that to me every time he saw me after he shook my hand was, well, we're going to keep this way, right? And I said, yes. So we went through that process and I don't want to say there was doubts, but I think everybody was concerned. Like, is there going to be interest in our
John, there were
little-
doubts.
There were doubts.
Oh yeah, I heard tons of them.
Yeah. You know,
25 years of trying this and nobody sticking to it because when the doubts were put in front of them, they walked.
Yeah, we had I texted this to John Ernest the other day. This flyer, the trifold flyer that was put together in 1983 with a whole cast of characters championing the redevelopment of this parking lot. 1983. Here we are, 2000 and what? Still hasn't been done. So that was our,
Yep.
Hey, pass this around. Check this out. We've been talking about this for years.
And another great leadership quality that I just learned today is that they didn't let me know that, so I wasn't too nervous about that. I don't know that I realized it was that serious. So great leadership, guys, through that. So we went through a process to try to attract private sector developers to the area, and we did that. And we went through a public procurement process using the parking authority to be able to identify and secure a developer for the site. And we got the developer under contract to develop the site. They gave us some ideas. They initially gave us some general ideas. Then we picked a couple, and then we did some interviews, and we sat down and they went a little bit more expansive on their thoughts. And we asked them to prove through data that what they were proposing would work. What was the market like in this area? Was there a need for these types of opportunities? They proposed a mixed-use development, probably, I'm not sure what it ended up, but around 220 residential units, and then a lot of commercial development as a true mixed-use transit-oriented development project on this 7.5 acre tract of land across the street, across the rail lines. That's important, across the rail lines from the SEPTA station. So Timmy then and the borough said, I wonder if we can get any money from any of the state agencies that have got grant programs out there. So I contacted PennDOT and said, would you come down? They were in the process of evaluating the Keystone Line, looking for transit-oriented developments on all the transit stops. And I called Toby Faber up and I said, Toby, would you be interested in coming down here? And he said, yeah, kind of, but we really only want to get involved when there's a developer involved, because a lot of times people say, well, give me the money and build all the infrastructure, then they'll come. And I said, well, no, that's not what happened. They already have a developer. What do you mean? I said, they've got a developer under contract for their TOD. Are you kidding? I said, no. And he said, all right. So we drove down there, very cold day. I think it might've been, I don't even know what it was. It was cold, but we were out there in the parking lot.
It does get sunny and warm in Lansdale, all right? It does happen.
Yeah, they do have solar projects down there, so they do have sun. We went down and he looked at it and he said, the train station's over there and the development's here. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do? And we said, what could we do? And he said, what if we built something over top of the railroad tracks from the train station to the parking, to the Madison Street development, to that parking, part of the development included the parking lot that was there, but it was in a parking structure. And we said, what a great idea. So we immediately secured some support from PennDOT to help them provide some of the infrastructure to make this a true connected transit-oriented development. And you can imagine how in the heck can you build over top of a CSX line and a SEPTA line, rail line? It takes a lot, right? But it was true partnerships with PennDOT and SEPTA. Now we start to talk to SEPTA a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish. And through the local legislators, we were able to secure a redevelopment assistance capital program grant for the parking lot. I'll let them comment, what the relationship at the time was with SEPTA, but I will tell you that when we brought SEPTA to the table, there was, nobody really knew what was the end goal. What are we going to do with SEPTA with this? And when SEPTA saw what the entire process was, they then came over and said, hey, could we partner with you on that RACP? Would you be willing to move the parking lot out of the development and over beside the train station? And by the way, we'll double what you were going to do with that and build a 5-story parking garage in the downtown. Parking was a big issue in the downtown. So now they're able to resolve that through this true public-private partnership and involvement with the state and with the local transit provider. And so you start to see that this development starts to take shape in here. There was a lot of public engagement that went on through that development, making sure the public knew what was going on, that it was very transparent. There ended up being a lot more investment, became funding in there for different things such as traffic calming and some intersection improvements around to try to help improve the circulation downtown. One of the other things I'll never forget the day we were all having a big meeting as Timmy was leading it, and SEPTA said, hey, can we park our buses in front of your new development while they're waiting for all the trains to come in, and we can just take people out off the buses. You could imagine the developer was not too interested in that. And it created a little bit of angst through that. But then again, through good public-private partnerships, through dialogues, to trying to get things done, Timmy came up with an idea of providing SEPTA some areas over by the municipal building where they could park their buses. And as soon as that happened, all the angst went off the table. We'll show you here in a couple minutes some pictures, and we're just going to kind of do a quick then and now, because we want to show you what this plan, not just the Madison lot, but what everything that these individuals did, what the success it was. But the one thing that I think I learned through this was, and John can speak to this example of this board and this authority and this administration going out and doing it in a friendly business environment and working with people and saying what they were going to do and mean what they say, created a level of interest in this borough that has resulted in tremendous amounts of other investments that have occurred. This Madison lot project was the first time they had ever delved into this, and I think they can probably articulate a little bit better about it.
And I will say, remember that capital improvement list? We began to activate it because, as Dan said, we did a 68% tax increase.
Yeah, we can't. I just got the 15-minute sign over there, so we can't get through this. We could be here all day. This was an incredible ride, and there were so many component parts that we advanced in a relatively short time. But the tax increase that I referred to turned out to be 68%, but that took the average borough annual bill to $399. So you know where it was if 68% got you all the way to $399. Mm-hmm. And so we have to have this budget presentation. And unlike most budget presentations, and either of you two feel free to jump in, instead of going number by number by number, it was much more visual. It was about, what does your $399 get you, right? Because fixing the budget's easy. We spend at the time, we spent $1.5 million on parks and rec. I can save $1.5 million, but just close the parks, stop cutting grass, no more community pools, no more community events. It's very simple.
What do you give up?
Nobody in the room raised their hand for that one. We could cut our police force even further. Nobody raised their hand for that one. We could do a lot of other things. Funny, nobody raised their hand for that one. But long story short, we go through this very visual presentation, and at the end, Matt, would you like to tell them what happened as Timmy concludes a 68% tax increase?
It was a packed room. It was like, all of us who were on council were sweating bullets because, oh my God, how are we gonna sell this big of a tax increase? We were meeting ahead of time, talking, okay, how are we gonna handle questions? How are we gonna handle the torches and pitchforks? Like it was packed. We're all sweating. I mean, it was not a cold day that day.
Yeah.
I just remember sweating like, oh my God. Standing room only, Timmy was down in front of the dais giving the presentation. We're all sitting up there. Okay, here it comes. Last slide. Therefore, we're recommending a tax increase, 68%, right? Standing ovation. Everybody in that room, get goosebumps even thinking about it right now. Standing ovation. Because thank you. Thank you for telling us what our tax dollars go to. Thank you for developing this presentation that it's digestible. Now we understand. We get what these dollars are going for. And that's that is one heck of a deal, the best deal in the area. $400 a year to get the services that you get increased. And what's best for Lansdale? It's simple. When you have that as your decision, what's best for Lansdale? We weren't in it for political gain. We weren't in it to play that game and moving on to the next thing. What was best for Lansdale? And we were all willing to make those difficult decisions.
I think that's, a good transition if we can, if we with having just a little under 15 minutes to go. I think there's the clicker up here is going to be able to flip this. I mean, John, do you want to maybe just pass through, I think as he's going through this real quick, and we can stop where we want to. We know there's a lot of slides. All the attendees are getting all the slides. But I think the idea here is that, as you can tell, going through the strategic planning process has yielded
Right there it is.
a town
Isn't that
has
inviting?
really been impressive. So I think, maybe we could end this on giving you some thens and nows real quick. And then if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
So here we are, 7 acres of vast wasteland. To the right, you see the train lines. There are 5 rail lines that go past this particular lot. It is an active CSX freight yard all day long. Trains in and out. Train came by my office the other day, had 75 cars on it. So it is constantly active motion all night long. And the SEPTA, what used to be the R5 line, every 10, 15 minutes, trains coming in and out. And that's where we are today. So there's the train tracks on the right. There's 180 apartment units, 18,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. And in the V section of that complex, there's a large open plaza for community events and for the people who live there. But what John was referring to earlier about connecting the lot, the Madison development, with the parking garage, you can see there's a pedestrian bridge that comes over the 5 tracks and connects the community. It's a 90-second walk from the 3rd floor of the parking garage to the base of the stair tower in that plaza.
And the other thing that I'd like to mention is I call it the spaceship, the alien, the giant water tower. If you go back to the old slide, this behemoth rusting Goliath of a water tower, it became like a symbol of Lansdale. Just forget about it. It was rusting, looked ugly. And so what we also did was partnered with the Water Authority to rebrand it, repaint it, make it look nicer. And so that also goes into that branding piece, and that looking at other things that are obvious that portray an image of what Lansdale is. I just wanted to bring that.
You can't see it so well on there, but our town logo is on there. So
And-
the stylized L for Lansdale, and it's a little cut off there. But
And one of the things that we did not touch on, and Timmy championed this, is that if you're going to ask for people to come in and invest in your community, you better show them that you're willing to invest in yourself. Otherwise, why would they invest in you? And so we went through a branding process, which we came up with that. We also went through a wayfinding signage process, and we also created a brand new municipal building. That is a wonderful project. We also invested in streetscape through grant money. Allison Schwartz helped us get some money for some grant money for some streetscape to maintain our main street. So here's a cold day in Lansdale, as they all are. And so we've created some brick pavers, trees and light poles. This is during the construction of it, not complete.
I think it's important, just real quick, to note that development that occurred was literally 200-300 yards off of the main street. And there was a very big concern from the businesses on Main Street that they were going to suck all of the people over to that development, which would result in them losing their businesses. And as you can see, the borough invested in them by this type of a project that sent the signal, we're not forgetting Main Street, we're trying to enhance Main Street. And the results speak for themselves, really.
We need to keep moving.
Yeah. This is the old Borough Hall, and this is our new, keeping the frame of the old building and enhancing it with new construction, combining police and municipal structures together. old post office that was Borough Hall. And there, John had indicated earlier, solar panels, new complex. That building is completely powered by solar at this point. We're completely off the grid. Infrastructure in our wastewater treatment, Main Street bypass connecting to avoid the main intersection in town that created an issue where people were stuck at a train, sometimes 5 and 6 minutes at a time. So this is a bypass grant money again. And then some infrastructure development, investment in our own departments and enhancing our amenities with tax dollars, wastewater treatment items. And then the parking garage with SEPTA under construction. And there's the water tower that Matt was referring to earlier with the Lansdale brand. 630 spaces. And then here is Railroad Avenue, where the SEPTA buses now park to allow people to cross over to the train station, which is right in the center, upper center part of the image. There's the parking garage with the bridge in the back, the SEPTA bus loading area, our municipal buildings directly on the left. And here's how we've taken that branding piece further to wherever you are in the borough, you're reminded of where you are. And our signage.
So instead of providing everybody a copy of a strategic plan and then you falling asleep when you're trying to read that, we thought maybe providing the fruit or the outputs of what that strategic plan had were in these pictures, and so we provided that as the PowerPoint presentation. This is obviously the proof in the pudding that what was done is implemented. I want to say before COVID, I stopped down to have lunch with John, and he said, "Let me show you some stuff." And that Madison parking lot has resulted in multitude of other investments for housing. I'd be very surprised to see how much new residential housing is in that borough. That's usually not synonymous with a borough. It's usually more of a suburban township. So this
I can tell you that since we have done this project, we've had about 1,100 new residential units come into the borough. So that's a combination of townhomes, condominiums, and apartment units.
I mean, you see that the effort that occurred 10 years ago with 2 and then the other 3 elected officials that came together for the betterment of the community in a bipartisan way, and set the vision as the leaders for that borough, and then brought in the staff capacity that also believed in that vision and also had capabilities, and then the reach back to various other capacities, in other words, consultants, to help them move this forward. And a lot of hard work and a lot of sweat and maybe a little bit of blood here and there has resulted in the betterment of the borough. What I find, I've worked all over the country with local government officials. What I find so interesting about this, and when we got together to talk about it, it didn't really hit me until they said it. This all occurred in one election term. Now, the benefits are beyond the election term, but as Timmy alluded to, the 2 men down on the right are no longer council members. Timmy is no longer the manager. Remember, Matt said we got 4 years to see what we could do. The great part about it is Dan's still on the parking authority. Matt lives in the borough, and John went from code enforcement to the borough manager. So they've been able to get some continuity there and be able to move it forward, but it's a great example. We just got the 5-minute sign. I'd be happy if anybody has any couple questions for the group, or if there's anybody online that has any questions, be happy to try to answer them over the next couple minutes.
I just wanted to again reiterate that those participating online are welcome to submit questions on the messaging. But first, we're going to see if there's any questions in the room. So if anybody there has a question, you can pose that at this time. Senator
Well,
Dash, thank you. Good to
Thanks,
see you,
Hutch.
Chris.
I'm Senator Chris Dush. I'm Chair of the Local Government Committee. And I just want to thank you for the partnership, the bipartisan work that you did. And the question I have is your plan still available in the presentation that you made to the public? Is that something that you could share with other municipal governments so that perhaps when they are trying to put a plan together to be able to present it in a way that would get that goosebump producing response?
Yeah,
Yes,
it is. It is. And I will say
don't
that Timmy's budget presentation that evening has set the standard for all of our budget presentations since. So we use that model to show the images of what your tax dollar provides for you. So we'll make sure, I'll send it to John, and I guess John can coordinate, and we'll make sure that we get a copy of it.
Yeah, and I think also it's a goals-based budget. And you have all of that. And we did reports every year on how we did on our goals. And to the pictures, it was actual pictures of our people at work and what they were doing, right down into the ugly inside of sewer pipes. And that was startling for people. And they were like, yeah, you got to do something about this. So, yeah.
I think from the strategic plan standpoint too, like, you know, the playbook on how to do it, we can provide the framework for it and what you should be doing, but every municipality is going to be different based upon the priorities and needs of that community. And so it's easy to say, you know, some municipalities might need an operations plan. Maybe they have already good operations in place and there's nothing to review there. But it's a really holistic view of current situations and identifying those foundational documents that you need to compile together to position yourself in a place where you can turn on the grant money. You can present it to developers. You can say, hey, look, we are ready. We put thought into this. And that's in my experience, I find that most municipalities struggle with that. And it's mostly reactionary versus proactivity. Reaction, oh, there's grant dollars out there. Let's try to get some grant money for some project. Wow, let's make up a project. No, let's define the projects we need, be prepared, identify the funding mechanisms that we need to make it, and then present it to those that have the deeper pockets that can help us facilitate that goal.
Well, I'll call it providential, the barbershop meeting. You know, to have the two of you set the stage and start and come up with the vision. And that's the whole point, is the grants are there to help facilitate the realization of the dream and the ways to improve the community. And you don't want to be chasing after grant money just for the purpose of grant money, Matt, as you said. Look at what your community needs, what your community desires, and it's like I said, it seems providential the way everything came together, and you guys have set an excellent example of how to get things done. I started out with in the House with 50 municipal governments in my district. I've got 177 now that I'm in the Senate. I used to go around and sit, and I still try to. I get around to some, but in the House, I was able to get around to 48 pretty much in a 2-year term. And sitting through those meetings, there wasn't the type of cohesiveness and direction that the two of you established that fortunately you were able to bring others on and who had the ability to grasp the dream and push forward. And I think Pennsylvania would be better for it if everybody kind of took a serious look at your example and tailored it to their own community's needs. And I appreciate your willingness to share it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions here. So Senator Hutchinson, we can bring it back to you to introduce our next speaker.
First, again, I want to thank the panelists. What a inspiring story, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. But now it's time to move on to our next presenter. Again, I think we're going to hear about how municipalities can deal with the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure kind of things that they need to do. So I am pleased to introduce Ross Snook. He is a Penn State Master Watershed Steward. Ross is Vice Chairman of the New Hanover Township Board of Supervisors, and he is Chairman of their Environmental Authority Board. He's also the Associate Director of the Montgomery County Conservation District. Ross will be discussing his research and experience in developing best management practices for municipal stormwater management, a very timely subject, obviously. And I want to thank you, Ross, for your willingness to share your expertise with us this morning, and look forward to your presentation. So the floor is yours, Ross. Thanks for joining us.
Mr. Hutchinson, I thank you very kindly for this opportunity. I have submitted a PowerPoint to you. I apologize for not being in person there this morning. This is something very dear to my heart. We have put together a PowerPoint for you. I just wanted to see if we could access that on your end.
I'm assuming my folks in the room are going to do that. Looks like that is going to occur. Thank you.
Okay, we'll work on getting that up for you. Mr. Snook, if you have the ability to share your screen and put it up, that's probably the easiest way. That'll go out in the room and online. Because then you can change the slides as you're able. And there we go. Perfect.
Looks good.
Thank you. In 2015, I retired from my company and got involved locally with my township, my neighbors, and started to look around me for one of the first times. I got involved with local politics in 2017, ran for supervisor, and also joined the EAB and Master Watershed Steward Program. Through the Master Watershed Steward Program, I shared a lot of my knowledge that we had learned in dealing with stormwater and flooding, and in partnering with Penn State, who came out with a new Science to Practice grant availability. We were able to put together a grant and were successfully awarded the opportunity to share our knowledge and develop it so that it could be used and utilized by any township, any municipality in the state of Pennsylvania. And we have opened this up to all the townships that would be willing and would like to utilize this opportunity, and at the same time, if so you don't choose that, you would also have the opportunity to use a good portion of it in-house simply to assess and maintain your current stormwater infrastructure. A BMP literal means the best management practice, but in stormwater context, it means a discrete stormwater control or structure like a detention basin. This project was made possible again by a 2020 and 2021 Penn State Science to Practice grant. First, it was to create a first ever comprehensive inventory, performance rating, and online GIS map stormwater BMP controls in Pennsylvania. And we looked at the controls or basins that really have an effect on stormwater for volume control, not so much water quality. We wanted to look at flooding issues and economic issues that residents have when they're flooding to such an extent where their entire basements are lost. Two, to provide an essential stormwater BMP education, availability, and tools for municipalities and other entities to enhance stormwater management planning and study. We invited many different agencies to come in with us to show the townships how easy it is to work together with one another for the ultimate good of all. Uh, uh, just for instance, we invited Krista Brown from the MS4 program from the Pennsylvania DEP. We invited Eric Conselman from the Montgomery County Conservation District to come in and help with discussion on how post-construction stormwater management plans are reviewed and approved, NEPTIS permits reviewed and approved. Thirdly, introduce an environmental review of development plan sets per stormwater ordinance and earth procedure. An earth procedure is an existing resource and site analysis map. This is the first item that a developer should be putting together in reviewing a development site to ensure that the land will support both on top and ground wise what he would like to do. It gives him a chance to look at the geology, the hydrology, the existing environmental needs and resources. We developed an 8-step process. First, prepare, educate, and download the standard guiding forms. They're located on the Penn State Master Watershed Steward webpage from Montgomery Counties. This is put up and maintained by the Montgomery County Coordinator. Secondly, started inventory of stormwater BMP controls. Third, locate and measure each stormwater control. 4, inspect maintenance condition of each stormwater best management procedure. 5, assess the performance of each stormwater BMP to manage stormwater. 6, fill out your listing of all municipal stormwater BMPs to the Pennsylvania map. 7, use your data to determine basin retrofit, fixed maintenance issues. And lastly, 8, enhance development plan set reviews from an environmental point of view. First, prepare for the stormwater management BMP inventory, assessment, and map in your town. The URL for this webpage is located right up in your up right-hand corner. Click on this. This page will come up. All the webinars that we have put together are free here. You can pick on them for choosing, and have developed 3 forms, and that would be download your standard guiding forms. The first is a stormwater BMP control field inspection form. Secondly, we have developed a spreadsheet, or the second form listed here, municipal stormwater BMP inventory and assessment list. It gives you the capability of listing all your basins on a spreadsheet or in a one-page format. And lastly is our plan set review form from an environmental perspective. Most of Pennsylvania's 83,000 stream miles are impaired by agriculture, mining development, and point source pollution. Only streams within the Pennsylvania MS4 municipalities are monitored by DEP, leaving most up to municipalities. In the last 10, 20 years, we have seen an yearly increase in rainfall with very little backslide. This is important to ensure that our infrastructures are up and running to the best of our abilities, and this procedure gives us that opportunity. Significant increases without 1995. Stormwater runoff greatly impacts our water as it erodes soil and carries pollutants to our streams. The number 1 Pennsylvania water pollutant is silt and sediment in our streams. We also have an increase in sump pump discharge that really isn't included in stormwater calculations. We need to do that. We need to be responsible for all the water that leaves development sites, not just stormwater. We have come to consider all the water that is generated on a plan set site as stormwater. And also, we try not to develop below the seasonally high water table. which we have in south and eastern Pennsylvania. New developments are required to control same storm water runoff as the site did prior to the development. How can this be accomplished? For example, nature controls stormwater the best. Here are two real good examples. One is a meadow. You can see all the plants, uh, all the different native species, where the leaves, the height of the plants capture rainfall and hold it so it can infiltrate into the soil naturally. You can see it much more clearly in the right-hand picture of a forested area due to the 3D representative picture here of the trees, leaves, sub growth with your lower lying plants, uh, uh, rushes, and again, native plants. The new Pennsylvania Model Stormwater Ordinance prioritizes natural stormwater BMPs. Unfortunately, most of the existing stormwater BMPs that we currently have in our townships were started in the 70s and utilize basins where the orifices on the discharge size are oversized. This is an example of the primary BMP that's been utilized since the 70s, and they're dry detention basins that very simply are nothing more, to put in layman's terms, a large bathtub with the plug pulled on them. Most of them have a 4-inch size orifice or greater, and they simply allow the water to come in and go out. And it simply contains runoff to attenuate runoff peaks and slowly releases water through an outflow size orifice to drain over a 1 to 3 day period. We would hope for this. It has an overflow to limit water level and it reinforced spillway to direct excess. It has a screen mesh on the bottommost orifice here, where the entire basin is drained. However, you can't really see it here, but that orifice is 4 inches. A retention or infiltration basin retains runoff, then slowly infiltrates and evaporates it over a 4-day period. It retains water after precipitation events. There's no outlet structure. It's a shallow area designed to temporarily hold and infiltrate or allow the water to go into the ground from a 1.5-inch form. And it has an engineered overflow structure that should be provided for larger storms, has a spillway reinforced notch at the top of the berm to direct excess, and it occasionally has a stilling basin to reduce velocity and sediment as the water initially comes in to the retention basin. In layman's terms, I look at a retention basin simply again as a bathtub with the plug put in, and it has 1,000 holes drilled into it to represent infiltration into the normal background soils. The new basins that are being currently looked at and utilized in areas with very high water tables and are termed the managed release concept basins, and they simulate infiltration by the use of blended soils. They also have are used where the runoff is 1.2 inches of rainfall normally. It's impounded in vegetation, filtered, and then slowly released to an under drain covered with amended soils. Additionally, runoff is stored above in a vegetated pond where some is evaporated as some is slowly infiltrated. It's occasionally coupled with a detention basin for volume control. A couple problems with the new MRC basins are the amended soils sometimes clog the perforated piping underneath has no way to clean it out. It also becomes clogged, so you run into a repeating maintenance problem with them. Wet ponds are used to retain water in a permanent pool with additional vegetated capacity above the pool. They're normally used in areas with naturally high groundwater table. They almost always have a permanent pool with a forebay for water quality, and most have an overflow structure to limit water levels in addition to a reinforced spillway to direct excess. Sometimes they include aeration to limit algal growth and cool the water. If you don't cool the water enough, these wet ponds become a very proficient breeding ground for mosquitoes. Rain gardens cool runoff, and then they slowly filter it and evaporate it. Excavated surface depressions are filled with infiltrating planting soil, planted with deep-rooted native vegetation to capture and treat runoff. They also provide wildlife and pollinator habitat and aesthetic value. Uh, these are very nice. They're very easy to put in by homeowners. They're used primarily to capture the runoff from residential roofs and wet areas in the yard. Some pump discharge uh, small volumes of stormwater of those of that capacity. All stormwater BMPs, natural and construction, require ongoing maintenance to adequately perform. The Pennsylvania Stormwater Best Management Procedure Manual as guidelines for each type of best management procedure or basin or wet pond or rain gardens. Secondly, municipalities must ensure proper operation and maintenance language in their deeds, in their development agreements to properly maintain their BMPs and have a procedure to enforce them. The DEP with their new stormwater ordinance requirements are really putting this in the forefront for the municipalities to do. Second, you can start your BMP listing by going to your municipal manager or engineer. Ask your manager or engineer for any lists they currently have used to track and inspect the listing they currently have the BMPs in your townships. B, get lists of BMPs maintained by your municipal maintenance department. Or you can try Googling satellite maps to scan for probable BMPs. D, if you are an MS4 municipality, you can start with stormwater BMPs reported in your annual MS4 status report or the post-construction stormwater management BMP inventory that was done to the DEP. And this is an example of one of the charts found in a post-construction stormwater management inventory. Third, locate and measure each stormwater management BMP control. Why? To ensure the data is accurate and precise. For instance, a discrete location, stormwater BMP category, and stormwater BMP type. It's very important to get out, walk the basins, look at them, ensure they're reported with the right lat and longitude, and the right things are looked at. What we tried to do was come up with a form and really make it almost multiple choice. We have a lot of drop down items where you click on it and it gives you all the proper listings of what can go in the spot provided, and it makes it so that you can do your inspections in a very consistent, standardized method. You can focus on the most impactful volume control based on BMP categories, and they are listed. And what we were really looking at were the basins that control flooding and have the heaviest impact on residents for not only flooding, but economic losses that they may have due to flooding. And we focused on core information or a basic inventory. we utilized an app called Theodolite, which you can purchase on your iPhone in your app store for approximately $7. So it's very, very economical to count and utilize. It has many different useful features on it. Primarily for our use is the Latin longitude that's on it. Also, it has the ability to give you a picture of the Latin longitude location, and it also has above sea level features. This little app, $7 app, makes everything we do possible.
Mr. Snook, this is Chris Gazy here in Harrisburg. I can tell that you have a lot of material that you put together for this, and it's been a really fascinating presentation. Unfortunately, for the integrity of our schedule, we will be having to move on here shortly, but do you have any final wrap-up thoughts for us? We really appreciate the level of detail and information that you've brought to us today.
Very simply, I can run through this. Can I have 5 minutes? Or how much?
Yeah, we can do 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, the main thing is we've taken our data and from the inspection sheet, put it on a spreadsheet. This gives the township the ability to look at everything in a very easy perspective and on one page. This is our GSI web sheet of all of our different stormwater basin locations. You can access that by clicking on this URL. We also have a lot of layers to our website, the local geology, the local hydrology, things that can really be utilized for plan set reviews. Finally, this is our review sheet for plan sets. That is the last form that's on the Master Watershed Steward webpage for downloading. If you look at the bottom orifices for basins, anything over a 1-inch size is really good for retrofitting. In our township, we only have one basin that works out of 45 because the orifices are too large. Imagine if all of our basins work good, what we would have. This is a very easy way for townships to assess their current infrastructure. Lastly, a review of plan sets. We look at things from an earthsand perspective and environmental services. This is our standardized systematic review form. We look at topography, geology, the hydrology, how the water flows through the development sites. We list all the current infiltration statistics, and we do it on a consistent basis. And these are just examples of what I just reviewed. And you can lastly ask the important questions. Are the buildings in plan sets being utilized in the best environmental ways? Ensuring planned stormwater BMPs adequately manage stormwater will mitigate future problems and reduce increasing costs due to stormwater. Lastly, we have over 800 stewards in 30 counties that can be called. They're a free labor source. Most of them are retired school teachers, people that enjoy the outdoors, and we like to work and help neighboring townships and one another. And I thank you very kindly for your time and listening.
And we thank you very much for being here and sharing this with us. I know from the perspective of the local government commission staff, we've taken more questions about about stormwater management issues in the last several years than in our entire history, just as we continue to see larger storm events in the Commonwealth. And I think this is a great resource. To all the attendees, we'll make sure that if anyone has any follow-up questions from this session, we'll connect you with any panelist, including Mr. Snook here. All the information that he's provided will be available to the attendees as well. So we thank you very much. We're gonna applaud here in the room, and I don't know if my tiny mic will pick it up, but this is certainly a sign of our appreciation. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to stick around for the rest of the sessions. And now, Julia, if I'm not mistaken, we have a short break before our next session. Okay, thank you. Take care.